بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على عبد الله ورسوله نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين أما بعد. So we continue inshaAllah ta'ala with the explanation of Bulugh al-Maram till we have reached the hadith of Ibn Mas'ud رضي الله عنه أنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم يؤم القوم أقرأهم لكتاب الله تعالى فإن كانوا في القراءة سواء فأعلمهم بالسنة فإن كانوا في السنة سواء فأقدمهم هجرة فإن كانوا في الهجرة سواء فأقدمهم سلما وفي رواية سنا ولا يؤمن الرجل في سلطانه ولا يقعد في بيته على تكريمته إلا بإذنه رواه مسلم. The first hadith that we have today is the hadith of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu, that he said that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said that the people should be led in prayer by the best of them in reciting the book of Allah the Exalted. And if they are in their recital equal, then the most knowledgeable of them regarding the Sunnah. And if they are in the Sunnah equal, then the oldest of them or the one that has precedence in the Hijrah. And if they are in the Hijrah equal, then the eldest of them in Islam, meaning the earliest of them to become Muslim, and in a narration, the oldest of them in age. And let not a man lead another man in prayer while in his authority. And let him not sit in the house of his brother in his particular place except with his permission. And the hadith is narrated by Al-Imam Muslim. This is the second hadith from the ahadith which deal with the preference of the one who leads the others in prayer. If you remember the first hadith, the hadith of Amr ibn Salama radiyallahu anhu, that it mentions the one who has the best hifz. أكثركم قرآنا, the one that has the most memorization of the Quran. Here we have something different. Now it's not the one that has the most memorization, but it's the one that recites the best. How do we join between these two things, these two ahadith? You remember the principle we've established, al-jam'u awla. Joining between the hadith is more deserving than taking one hadith and throwing the other hadith away. We want to join between the ahadith. طيب, how do we join between the one that has the best hifz and the one that has the best qira'ah? Which one of them do we put forward? Do we put forward the one who has memorized the most or the one who recites the best? In this there is, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best, tafsil. There is a few points, or there are a few points to note. The first is, or Shaykh Fawzan Hafidhahullah Ta'ala, when he explained this hadith, he said in general we prefer hifth, yani hifth comes first. However, I would add a small point of note here. And that small point of note would be that there are two aspects to the one who is the imam. There is an aspect which is obligatory and there is an aspect which is recommended. In terms of the aspect which is obligatory, you may have a person who cannot recite the Quran properly to the point where they make mistakes that could affect the validity of the prayer. But he's memorized more than the other person. So there's no doubt that we put ahead the obligatory aspects first of all. So here let's give an example. We have Muhammad and Ahmad. Muhammad has memorized 2 juz and Ahmad has memorized 1. Muhammad recites so badly that he changes the meaning of the words. But he has memorized more than Ahmed. Which one do we put forward? We put forward the one who has memorized less, but he is at least fulfilling the obligations of the salah. But this hadith is not looking at the obligation of the salah. This hadith is looking at the voluntary basis. So let's presume that both Muhammad and Ahmed can recite the Quran to the minimum standard required for the prayer to be valid. So they're both okay. But the one, Ahmed has memorized 2 juz, Muhammad has memorized 1. Muhammad has a nicer voice than Ahmed. His tajweed is a little bit better. But Ahmed's still okay. In this case, we prefer Ahmed, because he has memorized more of the Quran, and the discussion is not in the fard. It's not in the minimum standard, the shurut of being an imam. It's in the tafdeel, in the preference of which one is better than the other. If it's a matter of wajib and a matter of fard, and the imam cannot recite Surah Al-Fatiha properly to the extent that he mixes the words and he makes the mansoob, madmoob, he makes the, he puts the marfu' and the mansoob the other way around, and he puts the fatha and the dhamma on the fatha, this person does not lead the prayer, even if they have more Quran than the other person. But presuming that they both meet the minimum standard of being an imam, then in this case we put hifz over tajweed. We put hifz before tajweed. However, that is presuming that they are both at least at the minimum standard. After hifz, we put the quality of the qira'ah. Aqra'ukum likitabillah, the one with the best qira'ah, the tajweed, the tartil, the nice voice. And from the benefits of this hadith is the virtue of having a nice voice and good tajweed, because it gives you preference in the sight of Allah Azza wa Jal. If we presume that 2 people are there, both of them are hafidh of the Quran, which one is the greater in the sight of Allah? The one who has the best ada, the best performance or recitation of the Quran. And if they are equal in this, فَأَعْلَمُهُمْ بِالسُّنَّةِ, the most knowledgeable of them with regard to the sunnah, with regard to the ahkam. However, again we say there is an obligatory element and a voluntary element. So if we mean by this that the person knows basically how to lead the salah, this is a condition of being the imam. You cannot be an imam if you do not know how to lead the salah, even if you are hafidh of the Quran. But you don't know the rules, you don't know how to lead the salah. So you see the person, making the takbir at the wrong time and spending too less time in ruku' and too less time in sujood and mixing up the salah. This person cannot be the imam, even if they are hafidh of the Quran. However, presuming that they meet the minimum standard of being an imam, then if they are equal in hifz and equal in recitation, then we put forward the one who knows the most about the sunnah. Because there is no doubt that the one who knows the most about the sunnah is the one who you have the most expectation will pray in the best possible way. Because he knows the fard of the prayer, he knows the shurut, the preconditions of the prayer, he knows the arkan, the pillars of the prayer, he knows the sunan of the prayer, he knows the voluntary deeds of the prayer, he knows the things which complete and perfect the prayer, the mukammalat, the things which complete and perfect the prayer. So this person, you expect that the quality of his prayer is going to be better than the one who knows less of the sunnah. So he is also given preference, and in this is the virtue of the sunnah and knowledge of the sunnah in giving preference to the people. And if they are equal in the sunnah, then the earliest of them to make hijrah. And the earliest of them to make hijrah, and this contains the virtue of hijrah. the virtue of hijrah. I will read you what Sheikh Saleh said regarding the hijrah. He said the linguistic meaning of hijrah is to abandon something. Like the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, وَهْجُرْهُمْ هَجْرًا جَمِيلًا, and abandon them with a beautiful abandonment. And the statement of Allah Azza wa Jal, وَالرُّجْزَ فَهْجُرْ, and as for the idols, abandon them. I need to abandon, to leave something. And as for the hijrah in the religion, it is to leave a land of disbelief to a land of Islam for the sake of the religion. And this is the hijrah which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has praised its people. But what about the narrations which indicate or what would seem to be the conflicting narrations about the hijrah? For example, the hadith, لا تنقطع الهجرة حتى تنقطع التوبة. Hijrah will never end until Tawbah ends. ولا تنقطع التوبة حتى تخرج الشمس من مغربها. And Tawbah will not end until the sun rises from the west. And the hadith which indicates that there is no hijrah after the Fath of Makkah. لا هجرة بعد الفتح. There is no hijrah after the conquest of Makkah. How do we join between these ahadith? We say that the hadith لا هجرة بعد الفتح, there is no hijrah after the conquest of Makkah, refers to what? Hijrah from Makkah, yani leaving Makkah to go to Medina. This ended with the conquest of Makkah. Before the conquest of Makkah, the Muslims used to go from Makkah and flee from Makkah to save their religion, to go to Medina. After Makkah became a Muslim land on the conquest of Makkah, then there is no hijrah. But there remains hijrah from Bilad al-Kufr to Bilad al-Islam. And likewise, as the ulama add to that, hijrah from a place of kufr to a place which is less in difficulty or less in disbelief for the Muslims. Like the hijrah from Makkah to Al-Habasha. It was not hijrah from Dar al-Kufr to Dar al-Iman, but it was a hijrah from a place of disbelief to a place of at least where the Muslims can practice their religion, even if it is not a place which is an Islamic country as such or per se. The Shaykh, he said, therefore we put forth in the imamah the one who has precedence in hijrah if they are all muhajirin, because this is the one who was earliest to do good and who has precedence in doing good. So if everyone there is a muhajir, everyone there has made hijrah, then we give precedence to the one who made hijrah the earliest. But if they are equal in the hijrah, then the earliest of them to Islam. How could they be equal in the hijrah? Either they both made hijrah at the same time, or none of them have made hijrah. In the first place, they are not muhajirin. One of them is from a Muslim country, the other one has made hijrah to the Muslim country. So you cannot compare them in hijrah, because one of them was born and lived in a Muslim country, and one of them came to the Muslim country from outside. So you cannot compare them. In this case, we go for the one who was earliest to become Muslim. That is presuming that that the people who are competing to be the imam, not the whole congregation, but the two people who are competing to be the imam, or who are, being chosen between, shall we choose Ahmed, shall we choose Muhammad? Both of them have become Muslim. Which one became Muslim first? One of them was born Muslim, the other one became Muslim 5 years ago. They are the same in hifth. They are the same in qira'ah. They know the same amount of the sunnah. They are the same as relates to hijrah, but one of them was born a Muslim and one of them became Muslim 5 years ago. So we put forth the one who was Muslim earlier. In another narration, we put forth the elder. As is in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, Atani Jibril came to me, فَأَمَرَنِي أَنْ أُقَدِّمُ الْأَكَابِرِ. أو كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم, and he commanded me to give the elders precedence. So they're the same in the hifth, they're the same in the qira'ah, they're the same in the knowledge of the sunnah, they're the same in the hijrah, and they're the same in which one of them became Muslim first. So we look at which of them is the elder, because there's no doubt that age generally comes with a greater amount of wisdom and patience and the other qualities that come with age and experience. Then we come to the second part of the hadith. And let not a man lead another man in his authority. There are two types of authority in this hadith. We can call them wilayatun amma and wilayatun khasa. The general authority, and that refers to the wali al-amr, the commander of the Muslims or the leader of the Muslims, the leader of the country or the leader or the governor of the city, the one who is in charge of the Muslims. So it is not allowed for anyone in his presence to lead the salah unless he gives permission to them. So let's imagine that the ruler of Dubai, for example, Hafidhahullah Ta'ala, he comes and he prays with us in the saf. It's not allowed for anyone to step forward to lead him in the prayer unless they ask his permission. Either he leads us in prayer or either he chooses which one of us to lead in prayer. This is one point. The second point is, what is the wilayah which is khasa, even the limited authority, like the authority of the imam, and this hadith is very important. It is not allowed for anyone to lead the salah in a masjid where there is an imam who has been appointed to lead the salah without his permission. So you see some of the brothers, sometimes the imam comes 5 minutes late, you see them, they all stand up and they all like, Salli, 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 salli. You pray, come on, pray. Anyone can lead the salah. La. وَلَا يَؤُمَّنَّ الرَّجُلُ الرَّجُلَ فِي سُلْطَانِهِ. It is not allowed for any man to lead another man in his area of authority. You wait for the imam. Allahumma, unless it is clear that the imam is not going to come. For example, the imam informed you, I'm not going to come. Or he said, if I'm late by more than 5 minutes, I'm not coming. Or you waited 5 minutes, you see no sign. You check the wudu area, he's not there. You check the entrance to his home, he's not there. Then if there is a system that the mu'adhin is the second one to lead the prayer, let the mu'adhin lead the prayer. He has the same ruling as the imam. You cannot lead the prayer when the mu'adhin is there, because now he's the second in command, the second appointed to lead the salah. But let's say we waited 5 minutes, there is no imam and no mu'adhin. So we look, check the wudu area, he's not walking, he's not coming. Wallah, I saw in the UK sometimes, subhanAllah, they just get up and pray. Even the imam is coming in the masjid, in the door, the people say, Allah, salli, salli. Allahu Akbar. This is not appropriate for a Muslim to do. You wait for the imam. If it's clear that the imam is not going to come, there is a qarina, there is an evidence that the imam is not going to come, no problem. Then let the one who is the most hifth, the one with the best qira'ah, the one most knowledgeable of the sunnah, and so on. What do you do if the Imam Ratib, the chosen Imam, has very little memorization of the Quran, and the Imam al-Haramain comes and he's in the saf? Who has the most right? The fixed Imam. Because this is his sultan, this is his authority. However, if he allows that Imam to lead the prayer and he says, please Shaykh, you lead, no problem. But it's his sultan, it's his authority. And in this hadith contains the permissibility of the Waliul Amr, the commander of the Muslims and the leader of the Muslims, to choose imams to lead the salah, to choose the a'imma, to lead the salah in the masajid. Like is the system here. You have, the Da'ira, Da'ira Shu'un al-Islamiyya wal-Amal al-Khairi, the Da'ira, the Islamic Affairs Department, chooses imams to lead the salah. You say to them, what right do you have to choose when the Prophet ﷺ said, the one who is aqra'ukum Qur'anan ahfaduhum li kitabillah, and so on. How can you choose? No. This hadith contains the permissibility of the Wali al-Amr to choose an imam to lead the salah, even if that imam is not the best in Quran or is not the most knowledgeable of the Sunnah, providing that he fulfills the minimum standard and the minimum conditions of being an imam. And the end of the hadith, and let not one of you sit in the house of another in his place except with his permission. This is an etiquette from the etiquettes of Islam, that if a person in their authority or in their home or in their place which is theirs, they have a particular place where they sit. Like the head of the table, they always sit at the head of the table, or they always sit on the armchair, or they always sit, this is their place where they sit. It is not allowed for someone to come and to sit in that place without the permission of the person who it is their home or it is their place of authority. So maybe one of you in your home, you have a seat which you always sit in. It's not allowed for a person to come and sit in that seat from your guests or from the visitors or from the members of the family, unless it is with your permission. And this is from the excellent etiquettes and the adab of Islam, and the good manners that Islam teaches us. ولابن ماجه من حديث جابر رضي الله عنه ولا تؤمن امرأة رجلا ولا أعرابي مهاجرا ولا فاجر مؤمنا وإسناده واه. And Ibn Majah narrates from the hadith of Jabir, let not a woman lead a man, nor a Bedouin lead a muhajir, yani lead someone who has emigrated, nor a wicked person lead a believer. And its chain is extremely weak. And it is, as Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar said, this hadith is ضعيف جدا, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. However, there are, like we said, why does Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar include a hadith in Bulugh al-Maram and then say isnaduhu wah? Its chain is weak. Its chain is weak. We say, Hafidh ibn Hajar, why did you include a hadith whose chain is weak? Because there is a shahid in the hadith. There is a point in the hadith which is a point of benefit, because Al-Hafidh is not writing his own opinion, rahimahullah ta'ala. He's not writing I think or aqulu, I say. He's only writing hadith, but he wants to convey to you a concept which is not mentioned in the authentic hadith, but the concept is valid. Although he explains to you the hadith is weak. So the first issue that we have is that a woman is not permitted to lead a man in prayer, regardless of whether the relationship is one of being a mahram or not, regardless of whether she is under the age of puberty or over the age of puberty. Even a man's mother or a man's wife cannot lead him in prayer. This is the opinion of the majority of Ahlul Ilm. And some of them had some limited exceptions to this. Again, these exceptions in reality are not really worth mentioning. And there is an opinion from Ahmad that in Salat al-Taraweeh, if there is nobody who can recite the Quran in Taraweeh, then a man's wife can lead him in prayer in limited circumstances, presuming that there is no one else to lead. And these opinions are shawat, they are rare opinions that are not really worth giving a great deal of attention to. However, what is worth giving attention to is that it is permissible for a lady to lead another woman in prayer. And this is the opinion again of the majority of the scholars based on the evidence of a hadith that the Prophet ﷺ commanded Waraqa to lead the women of her household in prayer. And the correct opinion is that the prayer of a woman leading a man renders the prayer invalid mutlaqan in every circumstance. طيب, the next part of the hadith. وَلَا أَعْرَبِيٌّ مُهَاجِرًا. Okay. What is the issue of the Bedouin leading the emigrant in prayer? It is said the meaning of emigrant here is the one who lives in the city after having made hijrah. Yani the person who resides in the city versus the one who is a Bedouin. And the Bedouin is the one who roams in the desert without a fixed place of abode. Yani they don't have like a village they live in. Yani they travel from place to place, they move. Yani they are like travelers who move from area to area, from place to place, from waterhole to waterhole. It is said the reason for this is that the expectation of the Bedouin is that they are generally, and I use that word double underlined, generally, not always, generally less educated and not aware of the rulings of salah and so on and so forth. As Allah Azza wa Jal said, Al-A'rabu ashaddu kufran wa nifaqan wa ajdaru an la ya'lamu hududa ma anzala Allahu ala rasulih. The Bedouins are more severe in kufr and hypocrisy and more likely not to know the limits of what Allah sent down upon His Messenger. However, Allah Azza wa Jal also said, وَمِنَ الْأَعْرَابِ مَنْ يُؤْمِنُ بِاللَّهِ وَالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ. From the Bedouins are those who believe in Allah and the last day. So in general, this actually in reality is, the hadith is weak and we don't have a secondary evidence for this. All we can say is, the most we can say is that we should give caution to letting a Bedouin lead a city dweller, bearing in mind that usually the circumstance is that the people living in the Badia who live in the Bedouin lands are generally not well educated and are generally not suitable to lead the people in prayer. But if we know that that specific Bedouin is well educated and knows how to recite the Quran, then there is no harm in him leading the city dweller, and the hadith is weak. وَلَا فَاجِرٌ مُؤْمِنًا. And this is where we have some opinions of the ulama to talk about. That the fasiq, the fajr, the one who is the disobedient Muslim, the defiantly disobedient, the one who commits major sins or persistently commits minor sins in public, and the one who خرج عن طاعة الله, who has gone out from the obedience to Allah Azza wa Jal. And this doesn't mean the kafir, this does not mean the disbeliever, for there is no disagreement among the ulama of Islam that the disbeliever who leads the believer in prayer, the salah is not valid. And there is nobody disagreed with this. But the issue is the fasiq. And that is the one who does the major sins. And it said the one who does a major sin, or the one who openly does the same minor sin repeatedly without giving any care to it. The scholars differed about the validity of the prayer behind the fasiq in two opinions. The majority from the Hanafiya and the Malikiya and the Shafi'iyya held the opinion that the prayer is valid as long as the person is still a Muslim. So the fasiq, let's say the one that deals in riba, the one who deals in riba. Okay, so this person comes and he deals in riba. He works for the bank as the interest dealer for the bank, buying and selling in interest. And he comes and he leads the salah. According to the Hanafiya and the Malikiya and the Shafi'iyya, the salah behind him is valid, even though it is better that someone else lead. They don't like him to lead, they don't want him to lead, but if he led the salah is valid. They said, because of the principle, man sahhat salatuhu, sahhat imamatuh. The one whose prayer is valid, their being an imam is valid. This is the opinion of the majority, and it's an important principle. Man sahhat salatu, sahhat imamatu. The one whose prayer is valid, and he's still a Muslim, his prayer is valid, then being an imam is valid. Because there is no difference between the imam and between the prayer. If the prayer is valid, then the salah, that's it. If his prayer is valid, him being an imam is valid. The second is the madhab of Ahmad, and that is that the prayer is invalid behind the fasiq. However, they made an exception for the wali al-amr, for the ruler of the country. They said that the prayer behind the ruler of the country is valid even if he is fasiq, because of the command to obey him and because of the evil that comes from splitting off from him and rebelling against him. But they said if the fasiq is anyone other than the ruler of the country, we do not pray behind him, and the prayer behind him is invalid. This is the madhab of Imam Ahmad rahimahullah ta'ala. And they use this evidence of this hadith, وَلَا فَاجِرٌ مُؤْمِنًا. However, the correct opinion is the opinion of the majority from the Hanafi and the Maliki and the Shafi'iyya, that the prayer behind the fasiq is valid, because the fasiq is still a Muslim. And because of the principle, man sahhat salatu, sahhat imamatu. Whoever's prayer is valid, then being an imam is valid. And that has innumerous evidence from the Sahaba. One of the Sahaba was asked about the salah behind Ahlul Bid'ah, behind the people of innovation. And they are fusaq, they are fasiq. Because at the end of the day, they are doing a major sin, openly and publicly doing a major sin. The Sahabi radiallahu anhu said, Salli wa alayhi bid'atuh. Pray, and the bid'ah of the imam is his problem. It's not your problem. That is presuming the bid'ah is ghayr mukaffira. Yani it doesn't take him outside of Islam. Yani the bid'ah that doesn't take a person outside of Islam. As for the bid'ah that takes a person outside of Islam, that's a different issue. But even in the madhab of the Hanabila, that the one who prays behind the mubtadi', his prayer is invalid. And this also has mashaqqa and haraj for the Muslims. Because we are not living in a time of istiqamah where you can easily pray all the time behind an imam who is upright and honest and trustworthy and doesn't do the major sins. This is a blessing from Allah that we can do this in some masajid. But in many times you will be in a situation where you have to pray behind someone who is not practicing Islam the way that they should. Particularly in the musalla, in some of the places and in some of the faraway masajid, some of the countries where there are not many masajid, some of the countries where bid'ah is widespread. You cannot always pray behind an imam who is upright in Islam. Find this, in my opinion, and likewise this is the opinion Shaykh Salih Hafidhullah Ta'ala gives, is that the correct opinion here is the opinion of the Hanafi and the Maliki and the Shafi'iyya, that the prayer is valid despite the fact that it is disliked. We do not want to put this person forward to lead the salah. And he's musbil al-thawb, his thawb is dragging on the floor like a woman. We don't want to put him forward to lead the salah. But if he leads the salah, his salah is valid. And you praying behind him is valid. And the sin of what he does is upon him. And this is what is in accordance with the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, to the best that we can see. We'll take one or two more hadith very quickly. Our next two hadith are quite short and quite easy, and then we'll stop there. وعن أنس رضي الله عنه أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم قال رصوا صفوفكم وقاربوا بينها وحاذوا بالأعناق. رواه أبو داود والنسائي وصححه ابن حبان. From Anas رضي الله عنه that the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم said, رصوا صفوفكم. Close the gaps in your row. Close the gaps in your row. As Allah Azza wa Jalla said, إِنَّ اللَّهَ يُحِبُّ الَّذِينَ يُقَاتِلُونَ فِي سَبِيلِهِ صَفًّا كَأَنَّهُمْ بُنْيَانٌ مَرْصُوصٌ. Allah loves those who fight in His way in rows as though they were a connected building or a connected structure. Marsus, russu sufufakum. Make your rows connected. Connect your shoulders, connect your feet, and so on. And close the gaps. We know in this that, in this day and age, we have to be also balanced in this, that we don't create a fitna in the masjid. Some of the brothers, Jazakumullahu khairan, they want to implement this sunnah. So what they do is they make the rows as they should be, with the shoulders and the heels and so on, and level. This is as it should be. But the person next to them isn't aware of this sunnah, so he moves the foot away. So they move the foot next to him. Then he moves the foot away. Then they move the foot next to him. Then maybe the person will leave the prayer and go and pray outside. This is not befitting. We don't want to be a fitna for the people. Rather, put your feet with the foot of the person. If he moves his foot away, leave it be. Close the gap as much as you can. Try to keep your shoulder with his shoulder and so on. But as for this, foot games of you stand on his foot and he stands on your foot, then this is, our mashayikh, our scholars advised us that this is not something that should be done because of the fitna and the mafsada which comes out of it, which is greater than the maslahah, greater than the benefit. That maybe some people will run away from the salah, and maybe some people will get angry and raise their voices, and maybe they will shout, why are you putting your foot next to me, why are you touching me, and so on. So you put your foot the first time, and if he moves his foot away, then you leave it at that and you try to just keep the gap as closed as possible. But there is no doubt that the sunnah is to put the foot with the foot and to put the shoulder with the shoulder. وَقَارِبُ بَيْنَهَا, make close the gaps between the sufuf. Meaning the first row and the second row, the gap should be close. It should not be that the first row is praying near to the imam and the second row is praying at the back of the masjid. The gap should be close. So the Muslims feel that unity of praying as one, and so that the second row can copy the first row in following the imam. وَحَاذُوا بِالْأَعْنَاقِ, and make your rows even by making your necks even. And this is about ta'adil al-sufuf, making the rows level. So there are three things in this hadith: closing the gap, making the gaps between the two rows small, and making the saf level. As we know in the well-known narration, لا تختلفوا فتختلف قلوبكم. Don't make your rows differing, where one person is standing in front and one person is standing behind, otherwise Allah will make your hearts differ. Again, some people do this wrongly. One of the things that they do is they make the row straight by the toes. This is not correct. They make the row straight by making the toes level. This is not correct, because if you do this, the row will not be straight. Because I have a big foot and you have a small foot, if you put your toes together, the row will not be straight. You put the point that your necks are level, and your shoulders are level, and likewise your heels. Your heels. Because the heels and the ankles of a person make the row straight. As for the toes of the person, they don't make the row straight. Again, you do your best. Sometimes we go to the masjid and you put you make the row straight with your shoulders and your heels, and someone says, and he points at you to make your toes, bring your toes, just shuffle a little bit and then shuffle back again. Do your best, but the row should be made level, bil a'naq, with the neck, the shoulders, and likewise in some of the ahadith, the heels. This is what makes the row level. The row doesn't go level by the toes. You put a small child in the row, you put your toes with his toes, he's standing 10 centimeters in front of you, 5 centimeters in front of you. The row is level with the shoulders, and the necks are level, the shoulders are level, the ankles, the heels are level. And the last hadith that we will do today, from Abi Hurairah, وعن أبي هريرة رضي الله عنه أنه قال قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم خير صفوف الرجال أولها وشرها آخرها وخير صفوف النساء آخرها وشرها أولها رواه مسلم. From Abi Hurairah radiallahu anhu, that he said that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, the best rows of the men are the first rows, and the worst of them are the last rows. And the best rows of the women are the last rows, and the worst of them are the first rows, and it's narrated by Muslim. The mas'ala in this hadith, or the issue that we have to deal with in this hadith, is when this hadith applies and when it doesn't apply. So the scholars say this hadith applies when men and women are praying in the same space. You know, in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, the men and women prayed in the same space. There was no sister section. There was no qismun nisa, women's musalla nisa, or women's prayer area. The women prayed in the back and the men prayed in the front. Looking at al-maslaha al-mursala, the general benefit for the public, we now build women's sections of the masjid where the women are completely separate from the men. And the scholars say in this case the hadith does not apply. In this case, when the women are in their own section, the women may make the saf from the beginning of the first row to the last row like the men do. But when women and men are praying together in the same space, which may happen, it may even happen today. Sometimes you come, the women's section is closed. Sometimes you come, sometimes I have my daughter with me, she's small. I cannot leave her in the women's section on her own. So in this case, the women pray at the very back and move forward, and the men pray at the very front and move backwards. The best row of the men is the first row, the worst row is the last row, and the best row of the women is the last row, and the worst row is the first row. But as for when there is a separate women's section which is completely separated from the men, then this hadith does not apply, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. This hadith, last point, also contains, and it's a benefit, it contains an evidence for the prohibition of al-ikhtilat, of mixing between men and women. Ya ikhwan, if in the salah we put the men at the very front and the women at the very back, and that is in the most beloved place to Allah and the place where the shaitan is further away, then everything else is min babi awla, is even more deserving of separating the men and the women. For this hadith is from the adillah for the prohibition of al-ikhtilat, of mixing between men and women. Because ya ikhwan, the masjid is the most beloved place to Allah, and the place where the shaitan is the furthest away from the people, and the least likely that something haram is going to happen. And still we put the women as far back as we can fit them, and the men as far forward as we can fit them, and the biggest gap between them that is possible. If this is the case in the salah, then everything else is min babi awla, is even more deserving of separating between the men and the women. And also that salah is not something that there should be a fitna, yani the salah should not be a place where you're thinking about the opposite gender and who is suitable for marriage or not, and these kind of things. Salah, you're supposed to be thinking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and getting close to Him, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. We usually give the brothers and the sisters a small opportunity to ask the questions. I think the sisters have a little system where they put a little box with some papers in, inshallah. We will send one of the kids, if one of the kids can take the box. Okay, from the brother had a question. Tafaddal. That's a beautiful question. May Allah Azza wa Jal reward you. The brother, he said, we mentioned that the women are not allowed to lead the men in prayer. And the enemies of Islam always bring this issue up to show that Islam discriminates against women. Now it's a long topic. I'm just going to give you a brief answer, and there's a longer answer, but we have to bear in mind the time. But I'll just give you a brief answer. What I usually answer is, we answer from an ayah in Surah An-Nisa. Allah Azza wa Jalla said, وَلَا تَتَمَنَّوْا مَا فَضَّلَ اللَّهُ بِهِ بَعْضَكُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ لِلرِّجَالِ نَصِيبٌ مِمَّا اكْتَسَبُوا وَلِلنِّسَاءِ نَصِيبٌ مِمَّا اكْتَسَبْنَ وَاسْأَلُوا اللَّهَ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ. Allah Azza wa Jalla said, do not seek what Allah has given some of you instead of others. Men have a chance to earn reward, and women have a chance to earn reward and ask Allah from His bounty. What does that tell you? that men and women have an equal opportunity for reward. Is it the case that all of the men will be above all of the women in Jannah? La wallah. There are women who will be above you and above me in Jannah qat'an, without any doubt. From the Ummahat al-Mu'mineen and the great women that are mentioned in the Quran, and the Sahabiyat, the female companions, who are better than every man on the face of this earth today, without a shadow of a doubt. They are better and more beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Every woman has a chance for reward, and every man has a chance for reward. But what did Allah say? وَلَيْسَ الذَّكَرُ كَالْأُنْثَى. Men and women are not the same. And this concept of Western feminism, and I say Western feminism because Eastern feminism is a bit different. Western feminism, that men and women should do exactly the same thing in everything, and behave in exactly the same way, and do everything that the other one does. This is something that isn't a part of human nature, let alone Islam. It's not a part of human nature. Islam says men and women are different. Let me illustrate this in the topic of the salah. You have a very beautiful woman who comes and leads you in the salah. You're the one who is right behind her in the row, in the saf. You're right behind her in the saf. She says Allahu Akbar, you say Allahu Akbar. Ma'alish, but what are you thinking about here? The situation of men and women are different. Men have a different nature to women. You put a woman in the back row and a man in the first row, she's thinking about Allah Azza wa Jal. You put a man behind a woman in the saf, and most of the time he's not thinking about the salah. Because this is the nature of men. It's not the fault of the woman. It's not that the woman is an evil temptress or something like that. It is the nature that Allah created men and women with. Might there be a man who is not affected? Yes. Might there be a woman who is not a temptation? Yes. But what is the ghalabatul dhan? What do you really think is going to happen most of the time if you do this? Most of the time it's going to lead to corruption. So Allah Azza wa Jal from His knowledge said, the women pray in the back, it's better for them and they have more khushu'. The men pray in the front, it's better for them, they have more khushu'. Is it possible there is a woman praying in the back who is better than the Imam? I wa Rabbi. Of course it is. Of course it's possible that there is a woman in the back who is more beloved to Allah Azza wa Jal than the Imam. But in order to close the doors which lead to haram, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has set a nizam, a system, where it follows and it goes according to that, while there may be the case that every woman in the back row is better than every man in the first row. That is in the sight of Allah Azza wa Jalla. But men and women are fundamentally different. And this is what many women who are not Muslim are now coming to accept. That you can try to be a man and dress like a man and behave like a man and eat like a man and and do all things like men do, but ultimately it will not bring a woman happiness. What brings a woman happiness is to be respected as a woman, to appreciate her femininity, to appreciate that she's a female, and to appreciate the masculinity of men. But we live in a sad state of affairs where many people in the world want the men to become women and the women to become men. So they praise the men that behave like women and they praise the women that behave like men, and this is the opposite of the fitrah, where Islam honors the man and his role and honors the woman and her role, and ask Allah from His bounty, and Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best. We take the question of the sisters briefly, as quickly as I can. Some people say that women don't go to the masjid. Is that right? The Prophet ﷺ said, لا تمنعوا نساءكم المساجد وبيوتهن خير لهن أو كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم. Do not stop your women from going to the masjid. That means the masjid is open for our sisters. You're welcome to come. If it's safe, you have permission from your family members, you are welcome to come to the masjid. The masjid is open for you. But if you pray in the house, that's better for you, inshallah. Sometimes a lady might come to the masjid to learn something. She has a Quran class. Problem. Sometimes she just feels like getting out of the house and she wants to pray in the masjid. No problem, we don't stop her from that. But for her to pray in her home is better for her, as the Prophet ﷺ said. So it's not obligatory for a Muslim woman to pray in the masjid, but if she wishes, she may, providing that she has the permission of her guardian and providing that she does not have any danger to her or her honor or her dignity or her Islam. Can a Muslim woman do hijrah on her own from a disbelieving land to a believing land if the mahram refuses to accompany her? Wallah, this is a question that is better asked specifically about a specific person's situation to one of the mashayikh and the ulama, the scholars of Islam. Because the situation of each person in this case can be different. A woman who is fearing for her deen, who is, maybe she fears being tortured or she fears being killed or attacked. Some of the scholars may give permission for her to travel without a mahram to a Muslim land. And sometimes it may not be the case. This is something we should refer individually to the scholars of Islam, and we should allow those scholars and senior people of knowledge to make that decision based on the facts of the individual woman. But I would not give a general permission for a woman to travel without her mahram to make hijrah, but there may be certain exceptions to the case depending on the place where she lives, the threat that she is living under, and so on. Can you explain how to perform sujood as-sahw in the following example? Okay, this is a long question, and we have done sujood as-sahw already in Bulugh al-Maram, but I will try to answer it very briefly. I'm praying 4 rak'ah of Asr. In the 3rd rak'ah, after reciting Surah Fatiha, I have a doubt whether this is my 2nd or 3rd rak'ah. At this point, what should I do? Okay, so you doubt, is it my 2nd or is it my 3rd? If you're not able to come to a conclusion, like you don't just remember, you're still in doubt, then you pretend that it is your 2nd. You keep in your mind, this is my 2nd. And you pray as though it is your 2nd. And then at the end of the prayer, you make sujood as-sahw. At the end of the prayer, you make a prayer for prostration. Secondly, I'm in the 2nd rak'ah of sujood, and I don't know if it's my 1st sujood or my 2nd sujood. So again, you make it that it is your 1st, you make one more sujood, you base upon what you know, and then you make sujood as-sahw at the end of the prayer. Thirdly, and the only reason I'm summarizing this is only because we've answered in detail in the lesson on sujood as-sahw. So maybe I hope the video will be up soon, and it contains like over maybe 2 or 3 lectures which deal with exactly what to do and when to make and what and so on. Thirdly, what should a person do if they've forgotten to say Subhana Rabbi al-A'la in sujood or Subhana Rabbi al-Azim in the sujood? And there's another example. I think I would advise the sister in this regard that we have answered all of these in detail in the topic of sujood as-sahw. So I would really advise her to go back to that and to go through it, because we have answered each one of these cases in detail, inshallah. And if perhaps she can't find it, she could send perhaps an email and I could answer each individual one, but I don't want to delay the brothers with a 3rd and a 4th and a 5th example. I'll just answer the last question of the sisters. Is praying behind a person who to a fortune teller and believes in what they say and wears amulets and buries eggs under the ground valid? Wallahi, if this is the case of the person, then their prayer is not valid, and their praying behind them is not valid. Praying behind them is not valid. And we advise the person that if this is the state of their imam in their home country, that they should find another place to pray, and they should not pray behind a person, that this is their belief. The person who goes to the fortune tellers and believes in them and buries the eggs in the ground and seeks the help of the jinn and the shayateen, this is shirk. This is making a partner with Allah Azza wa Jal. Their salah is not accepted and they are not suitable to be an imam. And therefore we say that this person, if this is their condition, they should not be prayed behind under any circumstances, and Allah Azza wa Jal knows best. Amulets depend on the circumstances and the situation. Yani the fact that they wear an amulet alone doesn't get to the point where you can say for sure that they have entered into shirk. Rather, there is a dependency on, the issue of what the amulet contains and what the person believes and so on. However, there is no doubt that this is a severe thing and the person should be spoken to severely and with knowledge and should be given all of the proofs and evidences, inshallah. If the only thing you know about them is they're wearing an amulet, then yes. But if you know that they believe that that amulet benefits them besides Allah and they have the names of the shayateen and shirk and so on written inside, that's a different matter. But you do not know that the amulet is not the Quran, which is haram in the first place, but it doesn't invalidate the prayer. The clean-shaven issue is exactly what we mentioned. As-salah khalf al-fasiq. The one who is clean-shaven is fasiq. And this person is a defiantly disobedient to Allah Azza wa Jal. And the correct opinion is the prayer behind them is valid. No. No. So if, what is the issue if the people are mahram to one another? So for example, the men and women are praying in the same room, but it's the man, his wife, his daughter, his sister, and so on. In this case, is it best for them to go right to the back and the men to go right to the front? Wallahi, in this I don't recall what the ulama of Islam said, and I don't want to take a guess. So maybe I will look into this one and see what the fatwa of Ahlul Ilm is on this regard, and we will inform you whether they say that the hadith applies or not. So let's make this question a bit more general. The question is regarding the prayer behind a person of innovation. It's clear the person is doing certain innovations, certain things, and you come in at the iqamah time and you see them doing something which is an innovation. Is it better to walk out or to pray with them? The situation depends. If you have an alternative place to pray where the imam is upon the sunnah and you can reach it in time for the jama'ah, then you should do so. If you cannot or you do not know, then pray behind him. Pray behind him. As we said, the correct opinion is that the salah behind a fasiq is valid. This is the issue that you pray behind someone and you realize after the salah that this person was a person of innovation, for example. The difficulty in the example you gave is whether you are certain that this person has left Islam or not. If you are not certain this person has left Islam, then your prayer behind them is valid. But if you become certain after that the person has left Islam, and you prayed behind someone in a park, and you saw they put a stone in front of their, they put the turba in front of them, this little stone. And written on the stone is, Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali, Ya Ali, on the stone. And you didn't realize this until after the salah. And when you inquire, it becomes clear to you that this person's belief is a belief of kufr. No, the issue is more than this. The issue is the kufr that they believe in the first place. So if it becomes clear to you that the imam is not a Muslim, then you have to repeat the prayer. But if it's not clear to you, and there is some things there, but it's not clear, then the asl is bara'atul dhimma. The basic principle is innocence. You cannot say maybe they're kafir, maybe they're not, so I repeat the prayer. No, either you are sure that they are kafir, in which case you repeat the prayer, or you are not sure, in which case you go upon the origin that a person who says they are Muslim are Muslim. There is a hadith, and if I remember the wording, لا يزال قوم يتأخرون حتى يؤخرهم الله في النار أو كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم. There will not cease to be a people who refrain from going to the front until Allah will hold them back in the hellfire. Hadith is authentic. There is a narration with the hellfire and a narration without. One narration is there will not cease to be a people who avoid going to the front until Allah will send them to the back. And there is another hadith, another addition, send them to the back in the hellfire. And يُؤَخِّرُهُمْ فِي النَّارِ أو كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم. That is inshallah all we have time for today. جزاكم الله خيرا وبارك الله فيكم والله أعلم والصلاة والسلام على عبد الله ورسوله نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.